We're not late. You guys are all early. Oh, to all those above me that watch over me, to all of you, my fave parapeeps on this side of the veil, welcome. This is the Paranormal Ministry. I'm your host, Shawn Whittington. I'm a seminarian in the United States Old Catholic Church, and I'm coming to you live from my haunted home, my very haunted home, where I live. And I have my very special guest in the green room. I will bring him on ASAP. But whatever could go wrong to get the show going live all the way from Ireland went wrong. And it's a mixture of all sorts of things. A mixture of my elementals here and the fairy folk that live with Steve, I'm sure, and bad
I'm
weather
going
everywhere.
through 3 different computers. Wow.
So I'm just going to start from scratch, and and thank you all for hanging in there with us. Let me put my phone away. I was already on the phone telling everybody what was going on with the show, and I was putting things away. I had to get my headphones back and everything. Okay, so here we go. Let's check the prayer. Hang in there, Steve. We'll be with you in a second. Tammy B from Arizona. I have I had COVID bad at the start of the pandemic. Oh, well, God bless you that you're still with us. Spent many months in the hospital. Whoa. When I finally got out, I lost my job. The company that I worked for closed, and I have been struggling ever since. Can you pray and light a candle that I get back on my feet, find a job, and not lose my home? Tammy, you're going to make me cry. I absolutely will do that for you. And when I need to really call in the big guns for some help, I go to my dearest and oldest friend, um, St. Jude. I offer this prayer up for Tammy. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. St. Jude, Apostle of Christ, the Church honors and prays to you universally as the patron of hopeless and difficult cases. Pray for us in our needs. Make use, we implore you, of this powerful privilege given to you to bring visible and speedy help where help is needed. Pray that we humbly accept the trials and disappointments and mistakes which are a part of our human nature. Let us see the reflection of the sufferings of Christ in our daily trials and tribulations. Let us see in a spirit of great faith and hope the part we even now share in the joy of Christ's resurrection, and which we long to share fully in heaven. Intercede that we may again experience this joy in answer to our present needs, if it is God's desire for us. In St. Jude, please intercede for Tammy and help her get on her feet and not lose her home and find a nice job and stay in good health. We now and know our prayers will be heard through your intercession. Amen. Tammy, may the Holy Spirit enter and intervene in your life right now and remain with you on this journey and on to the next. God bless you. And this candle will keep burning for you, Tammy, until it's burned out. It'll enjoy the show here with us now, and then it'll go into the room with all the other candles burning, and it will stay lit until it burns out. But please keep me posted on your progress. Let's check the Paranormal Ministry mailbag. Jim H. from California. I know a lot about demons. How can I become an actual demonologist and learn to be an exorcist? Okay, Jim. Usually, when I answer this question, people get mad at me. I don't mean to make you mad, but in my humble opinion, it can't be done. It's a calling. And I hope you heed this warning. If you feel a calling, by all means, get some training and find out through your mentors if they feel that you've been called to the deliverance ministry or the ministry of exorcism, or or just how good of a demonologist you are once you learn all that. Um, it requires some boots on the ground, actual real time experience dealing with these things too, to find out. But be very careful, because if you haven't been called to this ministry, demons will chew you up and spit you out, and you probably lose your life. So that's my advice. Get some training, and keep me posted on that. I do not teach people how to be an exorcist. I just don't. I'm sorry. It's my humble opinion, a calling. But like I said, get some training and keep me posted. I want to hear from you again, Jim, on how your path into that field is going. Okay, anything I can do to help, advice wise, reach out to me and just ask. Okay. All right, guys. If there's anything you want to know about my wife and I and our ministry work, go to our website, www.ghost-b-gone.biz. If you go there to visit, remember we don't charge for our ministry work helping people with their paranormal issues. So I know times are tough. But if you notice the donate button and you're able to do so, click on the donate button and send us in a small donation for our ministry. I promise you it'll be appreciated from the bottom of our hearts. And trust me, we'll put it to good use. I'm also a certified spiritual advisor. So if you're having issues of a spiritual nature not attached to the paranormal and you'd like to speak to me about those issues, there's a place where you can make an appointment to speak with me on the website. Don't leave the website without navigating over to the page called the WSE course/book. On that page, you'll find the Ghost Store. A lot of cool things to purchase in there if you go for that sort of stuff. And everything you buy, proceeds go to all the things that I support. But scroll a little further down on that page and you'll see my new haunted autobiography, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. And I quote, scariest book I ever published. That was Annette Munich, owner of Stellium Books, my publisher. But don't let that scare you off of purchasing a copy if you haven't done your good deed for the day yet. Part of the proceeds of every sale of every copy of my book goes to support stjude.org, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Nevada, and the ASPCA. So it's a no brainer. You get to help some of the neediest children on the planet and the animals too. How cool is that? You can get the book a little less expensive at Amazon, but if you buy it off of the website, I autograph it for you and it leaves my office here and it arrives to you in a house blessing kit. So that's pretty cool too. Great time to get the book too, because God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry 2 Chronicles of an American Exorcist comes out in October. So it's a great time to get caught up on a lot of things that I left open ended in the first book that I bring closure to and updates on in the second book. So there you go. Scroll a little further down on that page, you'll see the Worldwide Society of Exorcists, which I'm a founding member. I offer a 12-week online college level course, Introduction to Spiritual Warfare, through the WSE. And this is a course for all you true warriors for Christ that want to have more knowledge when it comes to drawing your line in the sand, circling the wagons, making a stand, and putting up a good fight against, God forbid, true evil if that ever comes calling. This is the course for you. But it's not going to teach you how to be an exorcist. It's exactly what it is: Introduction to Spiritual Warfare through my eyes as a deliverance minister, the things that I've experienced and have dealt with over many, many years. You can enroll in the course on the website, but if you'd like more information about the course before making that type of commitment, there's a Worldwide Society of Exorcists Facebook page, or you can just reach out to me and talk to me about it. I'm approachable, easy to get a hold of, and we'll talk and see if the course is right for you. All of my students that graduate get a stunning diploma, certificate of completion, along with some other very special blessed items that you can only get from yours truly. Most importantly, please keep all of my former, current, and future students in your prayers. Thank you very much. Okay, the moment of truth, the reason why you all tuned in. I'm so excited to have him here. His first time on the show. He is a storyteller, he is an author. He is such an interesting gentleman. I've been stalking him and reading his bio and talking to some other people that know about him. He's just a really cool individual, aka the Storyman. Live. It's after 10 p.m. in Ireland, live from Ireland. Please let's give a warm paranormal ministry family welcome to the one and only Steve LALLY.
Hello, Reverend. How are you?
You
Well,
warned me. You
I
warned me.
warned you. I warned you.
Listen, well, it was when I was off camera, I decided to pull out the shillelagh in
Yeah.
case, we got to get serious with some of the
Well,
fays.
well, well. I have Saint Patrick here behind me.
I'm
So
I'm gonna say this. Steve he's got gumption and he wanted to do this show. I went to go set up the pre-recorded show and I came back and Steve was still there. He had two windows open. He was ready to go. He wanted to be on this show. So
Well,
I think all of us owe him a lot of gratitude because he showed that go-getterness.
absolutely,
Go-getterness.
absolutely. And let me tell you something else, Steve. The show's only an hour long. I know that someone with your talents, um, uh, the story man. I know that this show's not going to be long enough. I just have one rule today. I want you to have fun because I'm going to want you to come back. I want you to talk about anything you want to talk about. It was so easy to prepare for this show because when I started advertising you were going to be on, people must have just went and read your bio because the requests I came in were for all the things that are on your bio. So anything you want to throw at us, from an ancient Celtic epic of Ireland to ghost stories to myths to legends,
sure.
fey folk, stories about the fairies. I think I have elementals here on my property. But what I want to say to you, I want to get the important stuff out of the way first. I know you got a birthday coming up. So
That's
happy
right.
birthday.
Thank you.
That's next week, 2 days before the
Yeah.
gentleman's the
That's
gentleman's day behind you there, St.
right.
Patrick.
The Ides of March, the 15th of March.
I have a confession to make. I told you a little white lie. I bet you didn't think you were going to hear confession today, but I led you to believe that I have Irish in my heritage, and let me tell you how that works out. I'm actually Scotch English,
Ah,
but where the Irish comes in is my mother was born and raised in Brazil. May she rest in peace. And she baptized me in the Catholic faith under St. Patrick as my guardian angel. Many years later, when I was confirmed into Catholicism, during my confirmation, I was also confirmed under him as my patron saint. So growing up, St. Patrick's Day was always huge. He always made sure I had green on, told me make sure you let the girls pinch you and kiss you. Always came home to, I know this isn't authentic Irish, but I always came home to corned beef and cabbage. And so it was always a huge day. So that's why that's so special to me. I'm even planning for my 25th wedding anniversary, which is 4 years away, a trip to Ireland.
ah,
I'd like to go to, I believe it's called Station Island, where they have St. Patrick's Purgatory and St. Patrick's Bed. And if you and I are still friends, I'm probably going to pop in on you and say hi. So
ah,
that's where that whole Irish thing comes from. But I'm going to shut up now. I know people want to know about you, where you were born and raised, and then just tell us anything you want to tell us, brother.
okay. Thank you and thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for you know, letting me come on because the good folk they'd like to make things a little bit difficult. They certainly
Yeah.
do, and they're definitely here. They are here.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Steve Lally is my name. I'm a professional storyteller. I've been working as a professional storyteller for 15 years. That's basically how I make my living. people say to me, "What do you do for a living?" And I say, "I'm a storyteller." And they go, "No, really, what do you do?" I'm like, "No, like I sound like one of
Yeah.
Batman's enemies, the
Yeah.
storyteller," you know.
Yeah, I hear you, brother.
But yeah, I mean, working as a storyteller, I work in schools, I work in libraries, I work with older people, what's known as reminiscence work. I'm also the official storyteller in the Royal Hospital for Sick Children in Belfast. I've been their storyteller for 10 years.
Wow.
And you know, the staff in there, they say like laughter and is such a positive healing power. So they get me to come in and I tell the kids stories and make them laugh. And yeah, and that's part of what I do. And I collect stories. I collect all the old stories that have been lost because when the old people go, the stories go with them. So I collect them and I interview people and I write them down and put them into books. I've written a few. This is my first book, Down, Folktales, County Down in the north of Ireland. This is my second book, Kildare Folktales, which is my home county, County Kildare. And then I've written this one, Monaghan Folktales, another county in Ireland. It's a border county and bordering the north and the south. And then this is my piece de resistance. This was co-written with my wife, Paula, Irish Gothic, fairy stories from the 32 counties of Ireland. And it's actually hit the American market and it's doing really well. So,
Oh, God bless you, brother.
so yeah, so that's sort of that's kind of what a little bit about me. But you know what, Reverend, I'd like to tell you as a story. You know,
Please do, brother.
that's what I'm
I'm
here.
all my I just between you and I, uh there's a lot of people that will either tune in now or catch the replay of the show that are excited that you're here, and everybody loves, at least the people that I know and love. Everybody just something about the Irish and Ireland that is just so just I don't know what it gets in your blood,
Mhm.
and it takes over your heart. And like next Friday I will be Irish next Friday. I'll have I throw on my family tartan kilt, and the wife and I go to some of our favorite Irish pubs and catch
Cool.
the parade and all that. But I'll be Irish next Friday, and it is what it is. So, anything you want to tell us right before you tell your story, though, where can people go? I believe your website is www.storyman, all one word, .info.
That's right. Yeah.
They can
And
go there and find everything out they need to know about you, correct?
yeah, and if they want, I mean, if I mean, what I'm hoping to do is I'm because I've sort of been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century, um, and I'm seriously thinking about doing a podcast. So I'd like to if people want to check me out on Facebook, but also if you want to send me an email, it's stevelalleystories@gmail.com. And if anyone wants to maybe if anyone's interested in hearing stories, I'm going to set up a podcast, and if they want to get in touch with me, that's absolutely fine.
Well, that's going to be beautiful. Your podcast is going to do very, very well,
Well, I
and
hope
I will
so.
be one of your biggest fans. I promise.
Well, I'll tell you what. I notice on the wall behind you, you have a poster of The Changeling, with the movie with the late great George C. Scott,
Ooh,
uh, one of my favorite movies. Um, and I know you're interested in the whole idea of the changeling, because you asked, you mentioned that. So I'd like to tell you a story about a changeling.
please do. Is
Um,
it going to be as scary as that movie, A Hole in the Ground?
I don't know.
That was pretty scary. I just saw that a
That
few weeks ago,
was pretty
and that
scary.
was
Yeah.
scary. So, the show
Well,
is yours, brother. Take over.
no problem. Well, just before I start, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about changelings. The changelings, the belief was that they were children were stolen by the fairies, and in their place they left a sort of a strange creature, which was known as a changeling. And it was believed that the fairies like to take boys and not girls. And so as a result, they would dress boys up as girls up until a certain age. And if you look at old photographs from the Victorian era, young boys are always wearing dresses. And that's where the christening gown comes from. Because before you're baptized, you're open to dark forces. Right up until the point of being baptized, you have a dress. And then in Ireland, we have a thing called a biddy doll, which is a doll, it's very Wicker Man, a doll made from straw. And we have the St. Bridget's cross, which is made from straw. And that's hung on a wall, and it's a protection against the fairies. So there you go. Now, so I'm going to start off with a little poem about the fairies, and then I'm going to tell you the story. So here we go. Well, it's here now I be sitting, and the neighbors are around to say, he had a brother and a sister that the fairies took away. And up the road and down the road and up the road again, they hid them by the holy well down by the crooked lane. And up the hill and down the hill and 3 times round the brae was Niall Bug and Nora Bug that the fairies took away. Now the pot is hanging from the crook, and it's talking to itself. It's talking to the dresser and the rows of shiny delf. And there above the chimney brace and hanging from the wall hangs the old clock that has no voice at all. But if it had a voice in it, it would get up and say, where Niall is and where Nora is, that the fairies took away. Now there was once a woman, and her name was Mary. And Mary lived in County Kildare. That's where I'm originally from. And this is a long time ago. As we say in Ireland, fado, fado. And she had a little baby boy. And he was the apple of her eye. He was the cutest little thing you ever saw. He was like Baby Yoda, you know, gorgeous. And she just loved him, and he brought such joy into her life. And she never, ever, ever let him out of her sight. And she would stay at home and she would look after the baby, and she'd take care of the house and whatever needed to be done while her husband looked after the farm. Anyway, one day she thought, you know, she'd do a few little chores outside, and she fed the baby, gave the baby a little bit of milk and sang it to sleep, you know. Dilly-o dowsa dowsa dowsa, dilly-o dowsa day, a dilly-o dowsa dowsa dowsa, dilly-o dowsa day. Shh. The baby was fast asleep. So she thought, I can go now and do my chores. So she went outside and she fed the chickens and she fed the pigs and made sure the cattle, the calves that were outside were okay, and did all her chores. And then she came back in. But there was a strange sound. That didn't sound like her baby. It didn't sound like her baby at all. And not only that, it certainly didn't look like her baby. Because standing up in the cot, now the baby was very young, the baby wasn't able to stand, but there it was standing, looking through the bars of the cot. Hey, you, Mammy, give me some whiskey and give me some tobacco, and I want it now. And she thought, my goodness, I didn't know the baby was able to talk like so quickly. And she picked the baby up, and the baby scratched her and clawed her and bit her and kept saying, I want whiskey and I want tobacco and I want it now. And she tried everything to calm the baby down. She sang to it. She tried to feed it. Every time she gave it a bottle, it would push it away and say, I want whiskey. And every time she tried to give it something to eat, it would say, I want tobacco. And no matter what she did, the baby would not calm down. And she walked from one end of the house to the other, and she tapped its back, and she did everything she could, but nothing would work. And then her husband came home from looking after the farm, and he couldn't believe his eyes when he saw this strange little wizened creature staring up at him. Looked a bit like Nosferatu the vampire. Oh my goodness, he says, we'll have to get the doctor. So the doctor was called, and the doctor looked at the child and said, oh, I don't know what's wrong with this child, but there's nothing I can do to help. And the poor couple were beside themselves with worry. What were they going to do? But then her mother, her dear old mother, called around, and she saw the baby, and she said, oh, Mary, the doctor's not going to help you. You'll have to go and speak to Moll Anthony. Moll Anthony, the Ban Fassa, the wise woman. Now, in every village and every town in Ireland, there was a Ban Fassa, a wise woman. And the wise women, they knew the herbs and the plants, and they had what was known as the cure. And if you had something that you didn't understand, you didn't go to the doctor. No, 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 no. You went to the wise woman and she'd give you the cure. So Mary went to Mal Anthony, who lived on the Red Hills. And Mal Anthony, well, she was sitting inside her little cottage. And just before Mary went to knock at the door, Mal Anthony says, "Come in, Mary, come in, till I be talking to you." "Sit down, Mary," she says. "You're here to talk about your little child, aren't you?" She said, "How do you know?" "Ah, I'm Mal Anthony," she says. "I know all." And she says, "What's wrong with my child?" She said, "Well, first of all, Mary, let me tell you something. That thing in your house is not your child. It's one of the children born at the beginning of time, the wee folk, the good folk, the Tuatha Dé Danann, the fairies. What you have there is a changeling. The fairies have taken your child and left that thing in its place." "What am I to do?" says Mary. "What am I to do?" She said, "The only way to get rid of a changeling, of a fairy, is to get it to admit that it's not human." "How am I to do that?" She said, "Come over here and I'll tell you." And she called Mary over and she whispered into her ear. "Oh, really? Aye. Oh, okay. Really? Oh, aye." Well, Mary thanked Mal Anthony, and Mal Anthony never accepted money. So when she just gave her some freshly baked bread and a few potatoes, just for her dinner, and left. And she went back and she remembered everything that Mal Anthony had told her. And then she said to the baby, "Child, are you hungry?" "Yes, I told you I'm hungry. I'm hungry and I'm thirsty and I want whiskey and I want tobacco and I want it now." She said, well, look, I'll tell you what, I'll make you an omelette." "Oh, I like omelets. Oh, I love omelets. Go on, make me an omelette." "So I will. I'll make you an omelette." And she got a dozen eggs and she took some of them. And what she did was, this is what Mal Anthony told her to do. She cracked the eggs and she threw the eggs into a bucket. And then she put a pot onto the fire, boiled the water up, and threw the shells into the water. The changeling watched as Mary boiled the eggshells. "What are you doing? What are you doing? What kind of a dinner is that?" She said, "I'm making you an omelette." "An omelette? In all my 2,000 years upon this earth, I have never seen an omelette being made like that." Well, that was it. She got the creature to admit, for what human lives for 2,000 years? And she says, "I've got you," she says, "I've got you." And with that, the little changeling jumped out of the cot and flew up the chimney and went into a puff of smoke and was gone. Mary ran out the door screaming, going, "Oh my goodness, where's my child? Well, what am I going to do?" But then she could hear the sound of crying coming from the house. And she went back in. And she looked inside the cot, and there was her beautiful little baby boy, cooing and gurgling and giggling away. And she picked him up in her arms and sang, "Dilly-o dowsa dowsa dowsa, dilly-o dowsa day, a dilly-o dowsa dowsa dowsa, dilly-o dowsa day." And the baby was fast asleep. But let me tell you something. From that day onwards, she never, ever, ever let that child out of her sight. And she remembered what Mal Anthony had told her to do. She said, "The fairies fear iron, and the fairies fear God. So put an iron crucifix underneath the child's pillow, and that will protect it." And to this day, that's what many people still do. They put a little iron crucifix underneath the pillow of a child to protect it. St. Patrick, Bridget, and Columkill, and all the angels burning bright, protect us all in the darkest night. There you go.
Yeah, that gave me some goosebumps there because you know what? Um, Call me crazy, many have. I believe in all of that stuff, and I didn't know about the part back in the day that they used to dress the little boys as girls. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So here's the thing I want to tell you. Um, you know, intelligent, respected adults in Ireland will tell you don't build on a fairy mound or
That's
travel
right.
over it.
Hmm.
Um, there's got to be something to that. And then you have back in the day them actually going to the extent of dressing the young boys like girls.
Hmm.
Um, and I've just seen too many crazy things in my life. And I'm telling you, I've had people in the many years I've been doing this, I've had people call me and fear that something has happened to their children and that the child that they have is not their child. Um, and some of the stories I've heard are just bone chilling. Here's my question for you. Let's say she didn't do anything about it.
Hmm.
What happens to the little what happens to the little boy, and what eventually happens to this changeling? And what happens to the people that are sort of kind of taking care of this changeling if they choose to just go along with it?
Um, well, usually what happened was the thing about the changelings was they didn't live for very long. They lived for a period of time, but in that period of time, the parents would be absolutely driven, literally insane, and so it was really the what really happened was it was a situation where it was almost like you were forced to kind of seek help and to go to, and usually what happened was people would go to a priest, and the priest would know, and the priest would say start kind of something similar to what you do yourself, and some sort of a ritual will be performed to get rid of it. But the part of the problem was that in the old stories that people when this sort of thing happened, people felt that they were cursed. They felt that the devil was on them, and they were nearly afraid to go to a priest because they thought it was some sort of a reflection on them. So they usually went to uh, what was known as the Ban Fasa, the wise woman, and they, of course, in later on, they would have been deemed as witches, I suppose, but they weren't witches. They were just women that, and there was wise men as well. I mean, they still exist. People like I'm from Kildare, where you have horses worth millions of pounds, euros, whatever. And there's a guy that stud farmers will go to him to heal their horse before they will go to a vet because he has the cure, and he would be a descendant of one of these wise people, and they're usually like the seventh son of a seventh son and stuff like that. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a strange sort of a thing, and the thing about sort of Christianity in Ireland. I mean, they say the Irish are pagans with a thin veneer of Christianity.
Yeah.
Um, because there's still even a lot of. I mean, I showed you this thing here. I mean, it doesn't look very Christian, but you will find them in an awful lot of houses. And so yeah, there's a sort of the two kind of run parallel with each other. Like I actually did storytelling with a group of retired priests and nuns in County Monaghan, and we spent an hour talking about the fairies, and they took it very seriously. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's interesting. So
You
I mean,
you had
yeah.
you had mentioned you joked in a serious way about the fae being present,
Mhm.
the fae that hang around you being present for the
Yeah.
show tonight. Um, I too feel I do have some type of elemental activity on my land here, and I had when we moved in here 20 years ago. This huge tree that was so healthy on the right in the middle of our front yard near the master bedroom, and we started having some really bad paranormal activity here of outside in the land,
Mhm.
and I found this weird rock in my flower planter, and I asked my wife if she had put that there, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's my big lava boulder that I brought back from Hawaii." And I don't know if you know anything about that. You're not supposed to bring anything back from Hawaii. It's bad luck. So I had to take this rock, bless it, pray over it, put it in the nicest part of my flower garden, and take special care of it. And many people in my field and lots of friends with Irish backgrounds have said I shouldn't have done this. But the tree during this time, this big tree died and it was starting to fall towards my house. Well, I knew if it had fallen on my house or my neighbor's house, it would be big trouble. So one night I went out there. I did pray to the Holy Family and said some other prayers of protection and stuff. But I did also pray to whatever was attached to the land to please don't let this. You're welcome to stay, if you just don't let this thing land on my house or my neighbor's house or one of the children that play out in the street.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm telling you, it was falling on my house. And I gave some offerings. I dug a hole and I put some, you know, peanuts and candy and money and whiskey and some other things in this hole and filled it in. And the next morning I woke up, the tree had completely lifted out of the ground and fell in the exact opposite direction that it was falling, missing my car, missing my neighbor's house, and it fell just short of the sidewalk so the kids could still play and it wouldn't hurt any kids. And I knew then. I said there was just I knew then.
Yeah,
Um
well, that's fascinating because that's so similar to what happens in Ireland with regard to the fairies as well. We in Ireland, what's known as Cronasheogs, fairy trees grow all around the country, but they're sacred, and farmers, no matter what denomination they are, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, Presbyterian, whatever, they will not cut them down. They are sacred, and people will tie rags and stuff like that to them and leave offerings. And of course, Halloween, which Iha Hauna came from Ireland, and that goes back to that tradition of giving gifts to the fairies. And if you don't, oh dear, there'll be consequences, and that's where the term trick or treat comes from. And the reason why children dress up as monsters and things like that is, again, the 31st of October is, along with the 1st of May, are the 2 days of the year where the wall between our world and theirs disappears and they can cross over. So basically, if you dress your child up as some sort of strange creature, when the fairies are looking for potential, victims, they'll go, "Oh, look, he's one of us, or she's one of us. We're okay. Leave them alone." And that's why people actually dress up for Halloween. So there you go.
well, let's talk about this will go over big here today on this show. Let's talk about ghosts.
Okay.
I if you talk to somebody in Scotland, they'll tell you Scotland is the most haunted country in the world. You talk to somebody in England, they'll say the same thing. You talk to somebody in Ireland, and they just give you that look, like the hauntings in Scotland and England are child's play to what we have over here in the Emerald Isle. Um, and I just kind of the look they give you, you just kind of believe it. I know that when we go on our trip, we have the lady that's going to plan the trip for us. Her name is May Hernan, and she's an entertainer and lives there in Ireland. But she's good friends with the gentleman that owns and lives in Lep Castle.
Leap
So
capsule. Yeah.
we're going to actually go there. I don't think we'll spend the night, but I'm trying to push for maybe getting permission to spend the night in Loftus Hall. But I mean, the stories go on and on and on about some of the world's most legendary locations infested with spirit and visits by the devil and God knows what else in many locations in Ireland. Do you got a good ghost story for us?
Yeah, I have a great ghost story for you. Again, I mean, the thing about Irish ghost stories is they're not typical. Like they're not kind of you know a guy with a sheet over his head sort of thing. The thing about the Irish ghosts, and I think what makes them so frightening, is that when you meet a ghost, they come across as just another person, you know, and then you realize as the experience goes on that they're not, you know. So yeah, I've a great story about ghosts, a ghost, and it's called The Boy Who Had No Story, and I'd like to share it with you.
Please
Um,
do.
yeah, so long ago, again in Ireland, as my grandmother would say, when you had nothing, you had nothing, you know, and if you wanted anything, you had to work for it. That's just the way it was. So if you had no land, or if you didn't have a trade, or you know you were from a poor family, you had two choices. One was you starved, and the other one was you went to a place called the workhouse, and the workhouse was considered to be a fate worse than death. So to avoid this terrible fate, people would go to what was, it's hard to believe now, but there was in Ireland back, you know, I think up until about even 80 years ago, not too long ago, there were these things called hiring fairs. And in all the villages, people would go, and the farmers and the wealthy landowners would come to these hiring fairs to hire people to work on their land. So the men, the boys would work on the land, look after the livestock. The women would look after the houses or take care of the children. And in return, you got some food, you got a place to stay, and maybe some money. Okay. And the thing about these hard workers, that they were called spalpeens. That was the Irish word for these people. They were basically itinerant traveling workers. And they were very popular because they were great storytellers, because they would go from village to village, town to town, and they would get to hear all the news, all the gossip, and they would pass messages on for people. And of course, they had wonderful stories. And you have to remember, Reverend, you know, this is going way back, you know, way back tradition of the hard worker, before radio, before television, certainly before internet. And the majority of the people who worked the land couldn't read or write, so you know they wouldn't even read a newspaper, you know. So the more stories Spalpeen had, the more work they got. Now the boy in our story is called Tom. Tom was a great worker, hard worker, but he had no stories, not even one. He would bore you to death. But anyway, as a result, he was finding it harder to get work. He'd knock at somebody's door and they would say, "Sorry, Tom, not today. There's a woman coming down the road after you. She's a great storyteller. We're going to hire her instead." And this kept happening to him until eventually he could get no work and he was destitute. So one day he was walking down some road somewhere and he had no money, he had no food, he had nowhere to stay. And he said to himself, surely to goodness, things cannot get any worse. Well, Reverend, you know, when you've been around a long time, you do find that sometimes things can and do get worse, you know. And as soon as he said that, the heavens opened up and the rain came down around him. But he persevered, he kept going. And as he walked, in the distance, he could see a little light, a little flickering light. And he followed the light. And the closer he got to the light, he could see it was coming from a little cottage, a window in a little thatched cottage with a whitewashed walls and the little half door, and of course the chimney with the curl of smoke coming out of it. And Tom thought to himself, surely whoever lives in this house will let me in out of the rain, and I hope they don't ask me to tell them a story. So he got to the house and he just raised his fist and he was just about to knock on the door when the door opened. Standing in the doorway was a tall, thin man, dressed from head to toe in black. He had long black hair and a long black beard. Oh, sounds familiar. He said, "Tom, I've been expecting you." Tom thought, this is very strange. He'd never seen this man in his life. And how did he know his name? And how did he know he was coming? He said, "Tom, are you cold?" Tom says, "I'm freezing." "Come in, Tom, come in, come in." And Tom went inside the little cottage and it was lovely and warm. There was a big fire blazing. And the man said, "Tom, are you hungry?" And Tom said, "I'm starving." He said, "Sit down." And the man waved his hand over the table and a big bowl of stew appeared and some lovely homemade brown bread and butter and a big cup of fresh buttermilk. And Tom ate the whole thing down. It was luxury. He was used to eating bread and water. And then the man says, Tom, are you tired? And Tom says, I'm exhausted. The man says, Tom, behind that door, there's a room. And in that room, you'll find yourself a little bed. Go and have a lie down. Tom thanked him. He got up, opened the door, and sure enough, in the room, there was a little bed. And it was magnificent. Fresh linen sheets, feather mattress, feather pillows, and woolen blankets. Luxury. Tom was used to sleeping in hay barns and sheds with the rats running around. As soon as his head hit the pillow, he fell fast asleep. Until during the night, he was woken up by something twisting his ear and something poking him in the eye. And he looked up, and there was these three little creatures looking down at him. These horrible little monstrous creatures grinning at him. Ta-da, Tom, you're a lazy boy, Tom. Tom. Lazy, lazy, lazy boy, Tom. We've got work for you, Tom. We've got work for you. And one of them grabbed Tom by the head and pulled him out of the bed, and he landed on the ground. And when he hit the ground, on the floor beside him was a coffin. And then the little men started to laugh and giggle and nudge each other. Who's going to carry the coffin? Tom will. And they lifted the coffin up and they threw it on Tom's back. And they lifted Tom with the coffin on his back and brought him out through the house, out through the front door, out into the night with the wind and the rain howling around him. And they took him to a graveyard with a big wall around it. And they got very excited. And they started nudging each other again, and they said, who will carry the coffin over the wall? Tom will, come on now, Tom. And they punched him and they kicked him, and poor Tom had to lift the coffin up and push it over the wall, and then climb over the wall after it. As soon as he did that, the three little creatures walked a few yards the opposite direction, opened a gate, and walked inside. And then they took him to a part of the graveyard where there was a shovel sticking in the ground. Who's going to dig the grave? Tom will, come on now, Tom. And they made him dig a hole, and Tom dug and dug and dug and dug until he found himself in a big hole. The three little men pulled him out of the hole, and then they looked at each other and grinned and laughed. Who's going to go inside the coffin? Tom will, come on now, Tom. And they lifted Tom up and they threw him inside the coffin. They put the lid on top of the coffin and they hammered the nails in. Tap, 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 tap. Tom was trapped inside the coffin, and then he could hear the muffled voices outside. Who's going to go inside the grave? Tom will, come on now, Tom. And they lifted the coffin up, and poor Tom felt himself, boom, go down into the hole. And he heard the sound of earth being shoveled on top of him. He was trapped inside the coffin, fighting with the lining of the coffin, screaming for help. Help, help, somebody help me, please. I'll do anything. I'll even learn a story. And there he was fighting with the lining of his coffin when all of a sudden he found himself fighting with the sheets of his bed. It was just a bad dream, thank goodness. He lifted the sheets off the bed. He was still wearing his clothes and he had his boots on, and they were covered in mud. Very strange, most peculiar. Well, he walked across the room, opened the door, and went out into the kitchen. And there was the tall man dressed in black, staring at him, smoking his pipe. Good morning, Tom. Did you sleep well last night? Oh, I didn't. I'm afraid I did not. Oh, that's a terror, Tom. That's a terror. Tell me something else, Tom. Do you have a story to tell? Funny enough, I do, he says. And before he had a chance to say a word, the stranger stood up and said, Who will tell us a story? And the three little demons came flying down the chimney going, Tom will, come on now, Tom. Tell us a story, Tom, any story at all. Three Little Pigs, Little Red Riding Hood. Goldilocks, any old rubbish. We love stories. And they jumped on his shoulders and they started biting him and twisting his ears and poking him in the eye with their long, sharp fingernails. And Tom ran out of the house. He hit the ground and he thought, oh, that's it. But as soon as he hit the ground, the three little men disappeared, gone. And when he looked over his shoulder, the cottage had disappeared too. And all that was left was a ball of mist. But let me tell you something. From that day onwards, Tom the Spalpeen was never, ever out of work. Everybody wanted to hire him because Tom had the best story that anyone had ever heard. Thank you very much.
Oh man, you get. I'm gonna be thinking about that one all night. Um,
That's a typical Irish ghost story.
I had a witch on my show. I'm gonna have to wrap this up here pretty
Okay,
soon
no problem.
in a couple of minutes. But I had this witch on the show, and I'm friends with everybody. I don't judge.
Yeah.
Whatever you're into, as long as a person doesn't start, perverting their belief system and doing weird things.
Yeah, sure.
I, live and let live. Um, but then I had a gentleman who watched the show contact me, and I forget where. I think he was probably in New Orleans or near New Orleans, somewhere in Louisiana. But he was born and raised on the Aran Islands, and he told me, "You're the only person I know who could do what you do and still be friends with a witch. No one but you." And he kind of laughed it off. He said, "You wouldn't really get that where I'm from." He told me where he was from. He said, "Yeah, even to this day, I don't know if you've ever been to the Aran Islands." He said,
Oh,
"When
yeah.
if you're walking down the street or driving down one of those roads, country roads, if you see an old woman kneeling in the grass on the side of the road, uh, you dare not pass her, because there was some legend about, like, some of the people who weren't God fearing in some of these rural villages had a village witch, and if someone had an illness, they could, like, pretty much sell their soul to this witch to come and take the illness off of this person, and then she would sit by the side of the road, and if she caught eye to eye contact with a passerby, she could pass that illness on to that person. Did you ever
Mhm.
hear anything like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's yeah. That's something like there's loads of stories like that. There's a story about a guy with a hump on his back, and the witch took it away, but then somebody upset the witch, and the other guy ended up with the hump. So that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, and well, these women, yeah, there were these sort of characters were called Cailleachs, witches, and yeah, I mean, the thing is, they had great power to cure and to heal, but they could also put a curse on you, and people were absolutely terrified of them. Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't blame him. And he even said that he is able to pick them out here, even in the States, down in New Orleans where he lives now. He says, coming from my background, I'm able to pick out the witches here, and he says I stay clear of them. It stuck with him his whole life.
Mhm.
Um, so I love you. I respect you. I knew I was going to really enjoy meeting you and having you on the show. I've got to have you back. Did we ever figure out why we couldn't get the sound up right away? I don't even know. Or did the fairies just all of a sudden give you sound?
It was just so strange. I mean, it
Yeah,
was
he just had to switch from using his phone to the computer, so there was a
yeah.
problem with his phone. So,
There's a
but
problem with my phone. They didn't want me using the phone, so
yeah, yeah,
yeah, they wanted. See, I had it all beautiful. I was in the other room and I had a beautiful background and it was really nice. And they wanted to embarrass me.
yeah.
It's very easy.
Well, here's the $1 million question. Did you have fun when you come back?
Yeah, I'd love to come back. I mean, I hope you enjoyed the
Oh
stories.
my gosh, I could go on for a couple more hours with you easily. Like I said, my heart is in Ireland. I don't know what it is about that place. I'll find out when I go. Maybe I won't come back. We'll see. Um,
If you do come here, Reverend, make sure to give me a shout, and I'll give you a tour of some of the some of
Absolutely.
the sort
And
of
you too, you come to Las Vegas, let me know. And
just before we finish up, I just want to mention I'm actually working with an artist from Las Vegas at the moment.
oh, really?
Yeah, I'm working on a new story. It's a modern sort of folklore type thing, and this artist, he's called Richard E. Further Out. He's a fantastic artist. You can find him on Facebook, Richard E. Further Out, and we're collaborating together. He's creating the artwork, and I'm writing the story. So
Oh,
you
very
never
good.
know. You never know. I might be in Las Vegas. Is some
Okay.
possible.
Well, listen, God bless you. Have a wonderful birthday next Wednesday. Have a
Thank you very
wonderful
much.
St. Patrick's Day. Have a
Yes,
wonderful remainder to your Friday evening there in the most wonderful country in the world.
there he is, the
And
man himself.
I love you, brother. Thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care and God bless. Thank you.
All right, brother. Good night.
Bye.
I promise I'll have him back. Couple of months. I'm always booked out 2 or 3 months. I promise you guys I'll have him back. I love those stories. And he's so good at it. And I wish him the best of luck with his new venture with the artist here in town. Let's wrap this up quick, guys, because I'm way over. CommunityPayItForward.us. CommunityPayItForward.us. Go there, donate, help somebody. Shop there, and then that helps somebody. USOCC is the church I belong to. If you're interested in night prayer or Bible study, go to bishopjameslong.com, scroll down to the bottom of his homepage. The links to both of those are there. Thank you to Zach and Adrian Clayton, my co-producers. I'll be here Monday with an all. Oh, this is a great one of my monthly series, and it's gotten off to a great start. Monday the 13th, the Joy to the World monthly series with the one and only Dr. Joy Pugh. That's this Monday the 13th. Thank you to Things Network. Thank you to Skeleton Key Network. Thank you to Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. Thank you to PACT, Little P, capital ACT, Podcasting for All Coming Together channel, for all these networks simulcasting my show, and BeInspired.net. BeInspired.net. I'm sorry, BeInspiredRadio.net. BeInspiredRadio.net. Chicky Hot, the rock psychic, that's her radio network. She re airs episodes of my show all day long on Saturdays. Very cool network, a lot of great shows there. Go and check it out. And bad joke time. A bad joke, one of you sent in, I'm going to pull out of this Haunted Carnival Barker hat. My attempt to put a smile on everybody's face before I say good night and have a great weekend. Is this a joke? What would bears be without bees? Good night, Danny. Good night, Jack. Good night, Dog. Good night, Harold. Rest in peace. Good night, Ernie. Good night, Bill. Good night, Dan. I love you all. God bless you all. Peace.